Hello everybody, welcome to What Culture Gaming. I'm Scott and you're on another episode of Scott-A-Days, the title I was given to dive into all sorts of how X should Y type things. We've already covered Resident Evil 3, how Capcom should have handled Nemesis, how Sony should have handled the PS5's first reveal. I also dove into how BioWare could resurrect Mass Effect, and that got me thinking about other IPs and franchises that have just lain dormant for far too long. One of them being Splinter Cell, one of my personal favorite stealth franchises of all time, and something that I know millions of people resonate with, and it's pretty much a household name. It's beyond time that Ubisoft did something with this IP. And besides covering, the different sort of whys and the wherefores as to what happened with the Splinter Cell IP itself, it changed genre, it went down this weird action-heavy route for a while. I do think I have a pretty good idea, although, maybe an unexpected idea as to how Ubisoft could resurrect it. So, let's dive in. So first up, let's talk about what the hell happened across the 2000s. Splinter Cell sort of came around in that early 2000s stealth boom that came from Metal Gear Solid completely blowing us the hell away. I remember back then it being the trilogy of Metal Gear, Hitman, and Splinter Cell. And Splinter Cell, for as much as, Metal Gear got things rolling and, vision cones and, gadgets and things like that, Metal Gear always had way more of like an anime sensibility, whereas Splinter Cell was, by definition of its branding, so much more realistic and militaristic, and in terms of gameplay, way more methodical, and in places, kind of awkward. If you've played Splinter Cell, the early ones, you'll know that they go back and forward in terms of giving you upright satisfaction of taking a guy out or dropping down on someone, versus the very slow-moving, sticking to the stealth, watching your light meter, elbowing a guy 3 times to knock him out, stuff like that. It plays its hand very slowly in comparison to the highs of something like Metal Gear. Interestingly, this actually lines up with the sales figures. If you go back and look at how much each Splinter Cell sold, the original game sold 6.5 million, which dropped to 4.5 million for Pandora Tomorrow, recovered 5.5 million for Chaos Theory, then dropped down to Double Agent, and then, fascinatingly, came back with Splinter Cell Conviction and Blacklist. Conviction sold 4.5 million, Blacklist sold 5 million. But if you actually chart the way that the series rolled out, we had these, like I said, these really deliberate, belabored stealth mechanics in the original games, which, people didn't respond very well to an immediate sequel. But once Ubisoft started steering into the more action-heavy stuff, introducing things like the mark and execute mechanic in Conviction, something I absolutely love, it seemed like most people resonated with that idea of hybridizing action stealth together. And I think, as much as people, idolize, and I do too, those original games, Chaos Theory is one of the best titles of all time, that hybridized approach does feel like it was just easier to get on board with, and that you could store up this idea of taking out multiple people at once after you'd done at least one stealth kill. I think that's a better way to balance the signature feel of Splinter Cell, and that became a more identifiable aspect over time. Speaking of Blacklist though, obviously if you were around at the time, you'll remember the big ol' hoopla around Michael Ironside not reprising the role of Sam Fisher once again. At the time, this was said by Ubisoft to be related to that they wanted someone that had more motion capture experience, someone that would be a more youthful sort of presence when in the role, because they would be doing all these more over-the-top action scenes and whatever. They replaced him with Eric Johnson, who was... I don't know any roles Eric Johnson's done, but I know he's from TV. And they got him in, and a lot of people just looked at that and said, oh look, he's doing a really bad version of Michael Ironside. It's nothing like the legendary actor that we all love, and they moved away from it. Like I said, Blacklist still sold pretty well, so those sort of gamer conversations weren't representative of the wider mainstream, reputation that Blacklist managed to get. But a lot of people didn't like Eric Johnson in the role. In the end, though, it was actually revealed from an interview between Michael Ironside and GameSpot that the reason he stepped away from the role was that he actually got cancer. It was bowel cancer. And he literally says in that interview that he wanted to hand over the series to someone else, leave it in capable hands, and move away. He literally says that he didn't even expect to survive. It was something like a 65% chance of him not making it. And so, that's a massive thing to reckon with. And ultimately, it was amazing when Ironside came back and reprised the role again in the Ghost Recon DLC. Not a massive fan of the way that thing plays, but just hearing Sam Fisher be Sam Fisher again, and even talk about Solid Snake and the existence of Metal Gear and how he's the only one left, all that stuff was fascinating. But once you know the real reason as to why Ironside stepped away, you can start to see why it also made sense for Splinter Cell itself to also take a back seat for a while. Also, there's the fact that Ubisoft across the 2010s completely doubled down on formulaic game design. It felt like every one of their games became this open world thing where you were just visiting towers and points of interest on the map to slowly unlock it piece by piece. Ubisoft steered wholeheartedly into open world game design, very much inspired by Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, the things that had taken off so much for them at the start of the generation. And, you know, in the eyes of, if you just assume what a development team is going to be thinking in regards to applying Splinter Cell to an open world style, it just isn't going to work. The only thing I can point to that makes that work is Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain, and even that, the points in between the encampments or the places where you're actually playing the game when you're just driving or going from A to B, that's not what we talk about when we talk about Metal Gear Solid 5. It's the stuff where you could actually engage with the mechanics. The thing is, though, if you go to 2013 Splinter Cell Blacklist, that game nigh on teases exactly how to do a games as a service version of Splinter Cell. I know the whole games as a service moniker is wretched right now, but there is a way to do it. There is a way to have something that we return to on a regular basis and just have content, put into it every few weeks, every couple of months, ways to engage and maintain a community. In Blacklist, you were operating from the Paladin. It was this big, shield helicarrier type thing, and you would go to this big map that was in the middle of the room and you could just take missions from that. Now, they included various environments that you would return to over and over with different mission objectives inside, obviously retaining the Splinter Cell gameplay, but you were going after a different target or retrieving some items or something like that. That, for me, is the exact way they should do it. It's pretty much Hitman's overall sensibility, that idea of taking a series of maps and revisiting them for different reasons. I think that's a great way to give you more Splinter Cell gameplay, give you a reason to play Splinter Cell regularly, but with different, maybe community-driven or creator-driven goals that they can plug in whenever they want. Because let's not forget, as I said before, Blacklist became one of the best-selling of the bunch. If you take the original 6.5, Chaos Theory got to 5.5, there was that lull with Double Agent and Conviction, and it came back up with Splinter Cell Blacklist selling 5 million copies, or around 5 million copies. Those statistics are taken from an Ubisoft forum, so they're not exact, but they do give us an idea as to what people were resonating with over time. So we can ultimately say that the problem was not necessarily with Michael Ironside moving away and Eric Johnson stepping in, as the sales maintained anyway, and it would point to something internal at Ubisoft, that they maybe had a reason that they didn't want to continue Splinter Cell. Maybe it was down to the formulas that they were experimenting with or driving full bore into. And eventually we did get an answer in April 2019. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot did do an interview with IGN, literally laying out that the amount of vitriol that surrounded Splinter Cell Blacklist and the pressure that was put on the dev teams to, where the hell do they even go from there, that seems to be the reason they didn't do anything. To actually quote him, he says, "When you create a game, you have to make sure you will come with something that will be different enough from what you did before. Last time we did a Splinter Cell, we had lots of pressure from all the fans saying, don't change it, don't do this, don't do that, so some of the teams were anxious to work on the brand." All of that makes me think of the disastrous reveal of Splinter Cell Conviction from 2006, which, if you don't remember, had Ubisoft reveal this trailer where Sam Fisher was this shaggy-haired, Josh Brown-looking dude flipping tables at people, and it was like a full-on brawler. It was like, what the hell is this? We actually saw the gameplay, and then when they revealed it was Splinter Cell, it was the Call of Duty Infinite Warfare of its day. It was a lot of people going, what the hell are you doing? I understand, late 2000s, the boom of Call of Duty and Gears of War and action-first games, and stealth was on its way out, but the way to innovate on Splinter Cell was not to make him this big, shaggy dude that just wanted to punch his problems rather than sort of sneak around them. Because of the way Conviction went down, you can see why internally they were very hesitant as to what to do next, and Blacklist was a return to the Chaos Theory style of Splinter Cell, and I would totally say that Blacklist is right up there. It's Chaos Theory number 1, Blacklist number 2 for me. Guillemot does give us a ray of light in these troubled times, saying that now there are some things and some people that are now looking at the brand, taking care of the brand. At one point you will see something, but I can't say more than that. Now, this was dated before we got the reveal of Elite Squad, the mobile game where Sam Fisher returns as a cartoonified chap. Now, that goes alongside the Ghost Recon DLC that I mentioned before, so maybe that was what he was referring to, but I want to hope that there's a way to actually do Splinter Cell right. All of which is to say that it brings me around as to how you re-reveal Splinter Cell in the new age. You need something that turns heads, that becomes gifable, that becomes reactionable and does the rounds on social media and becomes the big thing that everybody just wants to check out. So, as much as it might be the most obvious way to go, I would totally do a old school traditionalist reveal where you know, imagine your video game conference hall, your E3 style hall. Doesn't have to be E3, can be anywhere. It can be the Video Game Awards, whatever you want. Whenever we can all sit next to each other again, somewhere like that. You have everybody waiting, they're watching all these different game trailers roll out one by one. Maybe Ubisoft themselves have just revealed Division 3, something that's, you know, expected and plain and fine. And then, you know, all of a sudden, cut the lights out. You just completely cut all the lights out, and you literally give it an amount of time where people are shining their torches around, they're using their phones to sort of see in the dark, and all of a sudden, all we hear is this. And as soon as that's rang out across the hall, obviously, some of us are going to know exactly what that is. I would hazard a guess that the vast majority of people know what the Splinter Cell goggle noise is anyway. All you do is you put the 3 lights on the screen, you slowly fade them back in, and you have Michael Ironside walk out, give him his Keanu Reeves moment, essentially, on Cyberpunk 2077. Mr. Michael Ironside walks out, and even if they haven't sketched out exactly how the game's going to go, you know, I have my own ideas as to how I would do that based on things like I mentioned, like the Paladin side mission system, Hitman adjacent stealth sections, things like that. Michael Ironside walks out and at least gets to announce, John Bernthal, Keanu Reeves style, that Splinter Cell is back. I mean, he even said in the GameSpot interview that he never went away. So I would duplicate that. I would have him literally saying, I never went anyway, I'm back, something like that, and reveal that the next Splinter Cell is coming. Assumedly, at this point, if it actually happened, it would have to be on next generation technology. Maybe there's a teaser, maybe there's a trailer, something like that to make it all nice and spicy, but give Michael Ironside his return to the spotlight. It would blow all of our minds, to be honest, and I think it would just be incredible. And you need something like that to remind people why Splinter Cell used to matter as well. It's such a big, monolithic stealth franchise, and it deserves to be held up there once again with the sort of gravitas and fervor that it helped shape the genre in the first place. So anyway, that's how I would reintroduce Splinter Cell for the new age. It's been 7 years since Splinter Cell mattered or did anything outside of DLC in a mobile game, and I think it's about time it came back, especially looking at the likes of the Unreal Engine 5's lighting tech. Something like that applied to a really good AAA blockbuster stealth game would just look absolutely incredible. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and let me know if you have any other suggestions as to what you'd like me to tackle in a how X should Y fashion. It can literally be anything you like, from plot twists to potential reveals to how certain showcases should have gone. If you'd like me to revisit the Genji, you know, massive damage crab, you just let me know. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.